My friend kept pushing into the slot canyon because the walls made shade and shade made him cocky. I kept telling him we'd turn back at the next bend. He ignored me. He did that little shrug like I was being dramatic, like the canyon was a hallway and not a trap. We'd already wasted time on the approach, already sweated through most of our water, and he still wanted to see what's around the corner. I wasn't calm about it. I got snappy. I told him this place didn't care if he felt tough in the shade. He laughed and kept walking. And the stupid part is I followed because I didn't want to be the guy who bailed and then had to explain it later. The canyon squeezed in tighter than it looked from above. The walls killed the sun and the heat dropped just enough to trick you. Sound bounced around like it couldn't find a way out. Every time I stopped, I heard my own breathing come back at me. I kept checking the sliver of sky like it owed me an answer. He kept moving. I told him again, next bend, and we turn around. He waved without looking back. I felt that sharp, familiar anger, the kind where you know you're right, and it doesn't matter because you're stuck in someone else's bad choice. I sped up, ready to grab his pack strap and physically stop him. He stepped on loose rock, slid, and snapped his ankle sideways with a sound like a branch breaking. It wasn't some quiet, "oh no." It cracked. It echoed. He screamed once, and then his whole face drained like someone flipped a switch. He tried to sit up, saw his foot pointing wrong, and started shaking hard enough his teeth clicked. I dropped next to him and went straight into fix-it mode without any plan. I grabbed his boot, and he grabbed my wrist and almost sobbed. The joint looked wrong under the boot, like the leg didn't remember how legs work. He started swearing, then apologizing, then swearing again. I told him to shut up and breathe. I wasn't nice. I tried to lift him. I couldn't. Not in that narrow space. Not with him clinging to the wall and tensing every time his ankle moved. I tried to shoulder him up, and my boots slid on grit. I tried again, got him half up, and he yelped and sagged like a wet coat. So I grabbed his pack straps and dragged. His body bumped over stones. His broken foot lagged behind like dead weight. His boot caught between rocks, and his heel ripped inside the boot. I heard fabric tear. Then he made this horrible, thin sound and started begging me to stop. I stopped. Then he begged me to keep going because he couldn't stand lying there. Then he cursed me for touching him. Then he cried. He wasn't being dramatic. He was panicking. Pain makes you stupid and mean. I snapped back. I called him a dumbass. I said this is why I kept trying to turn around. He tried to swing at me and couldn't even manage it because his hand shook. That pissed me off more because now I had to be the grown-up in the middle of nowhere while my friend fell apart. I taped his ankle the best I could, which was basically nothing. I used whatever was in the little kit and some cloth from his shirt. It didn't stabilize shit. It just gave my hand something to do. I kept looking up at the sky slice and telling myself we'd get him out before dark. That's when the air changed. Wind pushed through the canyon like someone opened a door. I looked up and saw clouds stacked over the canyon mouth, heavy and low. I felt my stomach drop because it clicked all at once. We were in a slot. Weather didn't need to be on top of us. It just needed to exist anywhere upstream. Rain hit the walls first. Little taps that turned into fast slaps. Water started running down the stone in thin sheets. The canyon talked the way people say, and I hate that phrase, but it did. The sound changed from dripping to rushing, like the place woke up angry. Then it came as a brown shove. Not a wave you can step around. A shove, mud and water poured in like someone dumped a bucket into a pipe, and it didn't stop. The floor vanished. Stones rolled under the surface. The current grabbed my calves, then my knees, and kept pulling like it wanted to put me on my face. I hauled him toward a small ledge on the wall because I didn't have another idea. I hooked under his arms and dragged, slipped, slammed my knee, swore, dragged again. He tried to help with his good leg and screamed every time the broken one bumped anything. I kept yelling at him to move, to push, to do something, even though he basically couldn't. We got him up on the ledge by pure panic. He clawed at the rock and scraped his palms raw. I shoved his body into the wall and pinned him there so the current couldn't peel him off. Water kept rising anyway. It filled the canyon fast, like the whole place, turned into a throat. Debris banged past, branches, rocks, everything upstream showing up all at once. The sound was so loud it felt like it was inside my ribs. I pressed my shoulder into him, one hand jammed into a crack in the rock, and try not to think about what happens if the water climbs another foot. He kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. I didn't answer. I couldn't spare the breath. The flow finally eased, not because it felt like mercy, but because water does what it does and then moves on. The level dropped a little. The roar turned into a hard rush. My legs went numb from bracing. I looked down at my hands and saw they were bleeding from gripping wet stone like it could save us. Night dropped, and the canyon turned into one long dark hallway. My flashlight beam bounced off wet rock and made everything look the same. I knew we couldn't stay on that ledge all night. Another surge, and we'd be done. Even without that, he was in shock, and I could feel cold creeping in under my skin from soaked clothes. I spotted an old mine adit higher up, a dark cut in the rock with rotten timber framing it. I hated the idea instantly, but it was higher, and it was shelter, and I was out of choices. I dragged him toward it one painful meter at a time. I didn't carry him. I couldn't. I hauled him by the straps, got him to shove with his good leg, and kept going while he cursed and cried and then went quiet for long stretches. Inside the mine, it smelled like rot and metal. My light caught a pile of small bones near the wall. Rodents, I told myself, because I needed it to be rodents. I didn't stop to look. I pulled him deeper, just enough to get us out of the opening, and then I shoved rocks and broken timber into the entrance like that could block anything that wanted in. That's when I heard it, a scrape deeper in the tunnel. Not fluttering, not water. A slow, steady scrape like someone shifting weight and dragging a boot heel. I froze mid-breath. My friend froze too, eyes wide, mouth half open. The scrape stopped the second we stopped moving. Like it listened, like it learned the rhythm of us. I picked up a rock the size of my fist and held it like a joke weapon. My hand shook so bad I almost dropped it. I kept the light pointed forward, but the beam died in the dark after a few feet. The tunnel just swallowed it. I couldn't see anything past that. I could only hear my own breathing and the drip from the ceiling. My friend started mumbling about water and shade, and just 5 more minutes, like his brain got stuck and couldn't unstick. He kept drifting, eyelids fluttering. I slapped his face hard enough to hurt my palm and force him awake, because if he passed out, I didn't trust he'd wake back up. He tried to push me away, weak and angry. Then he started crying again and whispered the same words like a broken recording. The scrape came back once, closer, then stopped again the instant I shifted. I held still until my muscles cramped. I kept telling myself it was an animal, a raccoon, anything. But animals don't match you like that. Animals don't pause when you pause like they're waiting for your next move. Dawn came slow and gray. My flashlight was dim and my head ached like I'd been punched. I shoved the rocks out of the entrance and cold air hit my face. The canyon looked torn up, mud lines high on the walls, debris jammed in cracks. The floor rearranged like it had been chewed. I got him up, got his arm around me, and we limped out, step by step, both of us shaking from cold and exhaustion and whatever the hell that night did to our nerves. When we finally limped out, I saw fresh boot prints in the mud outside the mine entrance. Not ours, coming from the direction of the road, stopping right where we'd been, then turning back. The mine shaft mouth sat behind a line of "no trespassing" signs that everyone ignored until they needed a reason to blame you. I climbed in anyway because my brother dared me, and because I'm a fucking idiot when I feel watched. He'd been on my ass all week, calling me boring, calling me soft, acting like every no I said was some personal insult. We drove out there with the sun dropping and the sky doing that fake pretty thing it does in the desert, like it isn't built to dry you out and leave you small. He parked crooked in the dirt pullout and killed the engine like he owned the place. He pointed at the signs and smirked, like the words were a joke written for someone else. I told him this was stupid, and he snapped back that everything I did was stupid cautious, and that I only care because I wanted him to think I was the good one. That's the kind of shit he'd say when he wanted to win. I hated that it worked. I grabbed my headlamp just to prove I wasn't scared, and he laughed and told me to go first if I was going to talk so big. I clicked the headlamp on and ducked into the opening, shoulders brushing rock like the place was narrowing on purpose. The air changed right away. Outside, wind hissed through scrub. Inside, the sound dropped off and the quiet got heavy. I kicked loose rocks down a chute and listened to them fall for way too long. The little clicks kept going, then turned into nothing. No bottom, just distance-eating sound. The beam caught old rails half buried in dust. A cartwheel tipped against the wall, and a lunch pail crushed flat like someone had stomped it in a rage. Seeing that little box made my chest tighten. It wasn't spooky. It was worse. It was normal. Somebody ate a sandwich down here. Somebody worked a shift and counted minutes and watched the dark and went home until they didn't. I kept moving because standing still made the silence get loud, like my own blood was trying to speak over it. My brother stayed near the entrance behind me, still half lit by the last daylight. He made these little snorting noises like he was waiting for me to freak out. I told him to stop hovering. He said he was spotting me like we were at a gym and not in a hole that could bury us alive. I told him if he was so brave, he could come in. He said he wasn't the idiot with something to prove. That pissed me off enough to push deeper. My headlamp flickered. I smacked it. It flickered again. I swapped batteries right there, hands shaking just enough that I fumbled the cap and it clattered on rock. When the light blinked out, the dark felt close enough to touch. I got it back on and it still flickered, like the air itself didn't like light. I tried to laugh at it, like, yeah, okay, haunt of mine, whatever, but my laugh came out thin and stupid and died fast. I followed the rails until they bent into a wider chamber. A rotten wooden platform sat over a drop, like an old work deck. I tested it with my boot. It groaned. I told myself it would hold for one step. I stepped onto it and it gave under me. Board snapped. I dropped hard, smashed my shin, and felt warm blood run into my sock. The pain came in hot and clean, and then the panic piled on top of it. I lay there with dust in my mouth, trying not to make sound. My brother shouted my name once, sharp and angry, like my injury was an inconvenience, and then he shut up. I crawled out of the hole and kept my weight low, teeth clenched, because every board looked like a trap now. My shin throbbed, so hard it matched my heartbeat. I could feel blood slipping down into my shoe. I wanted to limp out and demand he drive me to town, but I didn't want to hand him the win, not with him standing there with the sky at his back. Then I heard an engine outside, not a tourist engine. A diesel idle, steady, patient. A vehicle rolled up slow, then stopped. Headlights didn't sweep. They just stayed pointed at the mine entrance like the driver already knew where I was. I killed my light and hugged the wall. The darkness swallowed me so fast my eyes didn't know what to do. For a second, all I could hear was that diesel and my own breathing. I forced my mouth closed and breathed through my nose like that would make me quieter. Footsteps crunched gravel outside. A radio squawked once and went quiet. Then a beam of white light cut into the mine, slow, searching like someone checking shelves. My brother wasn't with me anymore. He'd stayed near the entrance. That was the whole point of this stupid dare. He stays up top, I go in, he calls me a coward, we leave. Now there was no shuffling, no muttering, no pissed little commentary. Just nothing where he should have been. I almost called his name. I stopped myself because sound travels weird in tunnels and I didn't want to announce anything. The beam crawled over the floor, over the walls, paused on the broken platform like it was taking inventory. Whoever held it didn't rush. They weren't lost. They weren't scared. They were checking. I started crawling deeper because panic picks direction for you. My shin screamed every time it dragged on rock. My palm scraped raw. The tunnel pinched tighter and the air got staler, like I was breathing out of an old sock. I kept thinking I'd hear my brother. Him cursing, him fighting, him running in, anything. I heard nothing. The diesel kept idling like it could do that forever. The beam moved again, closer, then paused, and I realized it was stopping at certain spots, like there were markers it knew about. It held on a pile of rubble, then slid off. It traced the rails, then lifted. It wasn't random. That made my stomach go cold. I kept crawling anyway, keeping my body low, try not to scrape my belt buckle, try not to let my pant leg snag and tear loud. I hit a dead end and found a chain bolted into the rock, thick links, fresh grease. Not museum crap, not old mine shit. The grease looked wet. The bolt heads looked clean. The chain hung at a height that made my brain do the math without asking. I touched one link with my fingertip and pulled back like it burned. The smell of oil sat sharp in my nose, wrong in that old dust. The light outside paused. A voice called into the tunnel, short and flat, like a worker checking a pipe. No frienditon. No question, just control. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew what it was. It was someone calling out because they expected something to answer. Like they knew the routine. Like they'd done this before. I pressed my face into dust and tried not to breathe loud. The beam reached farther in, then stopped, right at the bend before the dead end. It held there for a long time. My legs cramped. My shin pulsed wet. I could taste iron. I kept waiting for the beam to slide one more foot and land on me. It didn't. It just waited like it was listening for a mistake. A little pebble shifted under my elbow and rolled. The sound felt huge. I froze so hard my neck hurt. Nothing happened for a second, and then the beam snapped forward a little, like whoever held it had noticed. It swept the floor near the dead end, slow, patient, and I pressed myself flatter, cheek grinding into grit until my teeth hurt. When the light finally backed off, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like someone choosing to leave you alive. The diesel revved once low, then settled. Minutes passed. I still didn't move. I kept expecting footsteps, expecting the beam to come back, expecting hands. Eventually, the engine sound faded, not fast, not dramatic, just rolling away like it had somewhere else to be. I stayed down there until my muscles shook so hard I couldn't keep still. Then I crawled back the way I came, slow, one painful shove at a time, keeping my light off and my eyes on that wedge of dim gray near the entrance. Every scrape I made sounded massive. The whole time I kept thinking I'd hear my brother laugh and call me an idiot for taking it so seriously. He didn't. I crawled out after a long time and found our truck door open, glove box dumped, keys gone. Tire tracks from a heavy vehicle cut over our tracks and headed into the empty valley like it owned the place. I limped around the truck, yelling his name until my throat went dry, looking for a sign he just wandered off to mess with me. All I found was his hoodie in the dirt and one drag mark through the dust that the wind was already smoothing out. I tried the other doors like maybe the keys had fallen inside. I tore through the cab with shaking hands. No phone, no spare, no anything. I stood there with blood drying on my shin and the mine mouth behind me like a black eye in the hillside, and I listened hard for that diesel to come back. The valley just sat there, wide and empty, pretending it didn't know. I started walking because there wasn't a smarter option. The road didn't look far until you're on it with a leg that won't stop throbbing. The heat bled out of the rocks and the cold slid in. My socks stiffened. Sand packed in my shoe and chewed my skin with every step. I kept turning around, expecting headlights to bloom behind me, expecting the beam to cut across the dirt and pin me again. Nothing showed. That wasn't comfort. That was a warning. By mile 5, my mouth felt like cloth. By mile 8, I started seeing stupid things in the dark, shapes that looked like people until I got closer, and they were just cactus and shadow. I kept thinking about that chain, the fresh grease, how it didn't belong, how it waited. I kept thinking about my brother's silence, how fast it happened, how the headlights stayed aimed like the driver was staring straight through the rock at me. I walked 10 miles with a bleeding shin and a mouth full of sand, and I kept thinking the same ugly thought. The desert doesn't just kill you. It hides the people who like watching you almost die. The rental's temp gauge climbed hard, and the AC quit like it got offended. I smacked the vents, then the dash like the car could feel shame. The needle kept crawling, and the fan sounded like it was chewing gravel. I saw a patch off the road that looked flat, white solid, salt crust, and I pulled off to let it cool. The tires sank up to the rims in powdery salt like the ground opened its mouth. I stepped out and my boot punched through the crust. Not mud, not sand, just dry, loose grit that slid away from itself. I tried to back out slow. The wheels spun and the car settled lower. I floored it, rocked it, swore at it, and watched the tires dig 4 neat holes that got deeper every second. I grabbed an empty plastic bottle from the floor and scooped salt away like that would matter. I jammed rocks under the tread, shoved a floor mat under one wheel, tried the tiny scissor jack. The jack sank like it hit flour. Heat climbed into the cabin like someone shut a lid. I cracked both front doors and it still poured in. I did inventory because that's what my brain does before it panics. Phone, no signal, keys, a cooler, 2 bottles, a cheap multi-tool that would struggle to open a can. I drank half my water because my mouth had already turned to paper, and then I hated myself for it. I told myself I'd wait for a ranger, like saying the word made a person appear. I hit the horn until my thumb hurt. The first blast sounded normal, then they went thin, then tired like the car was giving up too. My phone dimmed and threw a temperature warning. I walked a few yards up the road anyway, held it high, spun in a slow circle, got the same dead bars. I started arguing with myself out loud. Stay calm, don't waste energy, don't be a bitch. Then I heard my own voice crack, and I shut up because it sounded weak. I tried getting the car out one more time, harder because anger feels useful. I cranked the wheel, punched the gas, felt the tires spin and the body settle like it was slowly kneeling. The smell turned sharp, hot rubber and hot metal fighting. I stopped because I wasn't going to trade stuck for on fire. I got out, slammed the door, immediately regretted it because the slam was just noise in a place that didn't listen. A pickup finally appeared, moving slow, like it wasn't sure the road was real. Relief hit so hard my knees went weak. I waved both arms, jumped, made myself big. It slowed. It didn't stop. It rolled past, then drifted into a lazy turn like the driver wanted another look. No friendly wave, no quick honk, no brake lights that meant help. Just a slow circle. That's when the fear changed shape. Not I'm stuck fear. I'm seeing fear. I grabbed my keys, my last bottle, and that shitty multi-tool and walked behind a low rise because I didn't like the way the truck moved. The rise wasn't much, but it broke the line of sight. I crouched in dirt and tried to make my breathing quiet. The heat kept hammering my skull. My vision fluttered at the edges like a bad screen. I pressed my tongue to my teeth to keep it from clacking. The truck stopped where it could see my rental. When it first slowed, I stepped closer to the asphalt so it could see my face, not just the stranded car. It didn't stop clean. It just crawled. I saw the driver's profile behind dark glass, and it looked measuring. When I ducked behind the rise, I waited for the obvious thing, someone calling out. Nothing. He popped my trunk like he'd done it before. He leaned into the front seat too, digging around, and I realized he was checking for anything that would make me walk. For a second he paused, and I thought he'd spotted me, and my stomach dropped. I pressed my chest to the dirt and held my breath. The driver got out and walked around my rental like he was inspecting his own property. He didn't call out. He didn't scan the flats for me. He didn't act confused. He opened my trunk. He opened the back door. He leaned in like he owned me. My whole body surged with that stupid urge to rush him, like rage could cancel physics. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood because I didn't trust my mouth not to make noise. His engine idled and the sound drilled into my head. I felt the cliff edge in my body where you stand up too fast and everything goes black. I picture myself stepping out, slipping in the salt, swinging a multi-tool like an idiot, and ending up face down while he stood there breathing easy. He started dragging my stuff out. My suitcase first, then my cooler. He hauled them to his bed and tossed them in like he was shopping. The cooler was the part that made my stomach flip. That wasn't stuff. That was time. He went back in the car again, checked the seats, grabbed a small bag, and shut the door with this casual slam that felt like a verdict. I fought with myself in the dirt. Stand up. Don't. Scream. Don't. If I scared him off, would he come back meaner? If I ran at him, would I even reach the road without dropping? My hand gripped the multi-tool so hard the metal bit my palm. It didn't make me brave. It just made me feel small, like a kid holding keys between their fingers and pretending that's a weapon. He walked back to his truck and shifted my things around like he was packing groceries. He shook the cooler once, listening, and my face went hot with humiliation. I kept waiting for him to come looking for me. When he didn't, it felt like another insult. He climbed back in his truck, sat for a beat with the door open like he was thinking, then shut it and rolled away. No ruse, no glance back, just tires on asphalt and a thin ribbon of dust, and then empty road again, like he'd erased himself. I stayed crouched longer than I needed to because my body wouldn't accept that the danger had left. When I finally stood, the horizon tilted and my stomach lurched. I walked back to the rental and the car looked smaller, like it had already lost. The trunk was empty. The back seat was empty. My little pile of I'm prepared was gone. I checked my phone again like a prayer. Still dead. I hit the horn and it wheezed, and I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time because even the horn sounded embarrassed. I tried to dig again because what else do you do? I scraped at salt until my hands cramped. I shoved rocks under the tires until my fingers split. I climbed in, pressed the gas, felt the car shudder, and settle again. I stopped. I sat there with my head against the steering wheel, shaking, not from cold, from the ugly realization that the place had me pinned and a stranger had just proven it. My throat started doing that tight swallow that doesn't work. I took the smallest sip from my last bottle and forced myself to stop. I tore a floor mat into strips, wrapped my head, tied it ugly under my chin. The rubber stank. I didn't care. The inside edge of one window had a thin, damp film, like the car was sweating, and I leaned in and licked it like an animal. I hated myself for it while I did it. After that, the hours turned mean. I heard engines that weren't there. I saw movement that was just heat shimmer. I kept checking the road, then retreating to the thin shadow of the open door because it was the only shadow I had. I argued with myself about walking for help. Walk and you might meet someone. Walk and you might drop in the open and nobody finds you. Stay and you might get a rescuer. Stay and you might bake in place. Every option felt like a coin flip with loaded sides. I kept thinking about that truck looping back, how it didn't even pretend to be kind. I kept replaying the moment he leaned into my car, casual, like the world owed him my life. I tried piling a few rocks on the shoulder into an arrow, but it looked stupid and small against all that flat. Every distant engine sound made me stand up too fast and grab the door to keep from falling. When help finally did stop, I tried to explain the truck and watched their faces tilt into that careful look people get when they think you're overheated and confused. When another vehicle finally slowed later, I don't remember doing anything smart. I remember trying to stand tall and almost folding because my legs went rubbery. I remember hands catching my arm. Not gentle, just practical. I remember shade, real shade, and how my body tried to meld into it. I remember people looking into my car and then looking at me like they were deciding whether I was lying, confused, dramatic, whatever. I tried to explain the truck, and my words came out chopped and bitter, like I was defending myself in court. Later, in air conditioning, with my skin peeling and my head still pounding, I called the rental company. I called whoever would take a report. I tried to describe a truck I barely saw. No plate, no camera, no proof, just a blank road and my voice. People kept steering the conversation back to my mistake, the heat, the lesson. Like the real story was me being careless, not a guy who rolled up, saw someone stuck, and decided to cash in. He didn't need a gun. He didn't need to lay a hand on me. He just waited for the place to soften me up. Then he walked in and took his cut. He left me with a buried rental and a son that didn't care. That's the part that still disgusts me. The valley didn't even have to kill me. It just made me easy.